The new intro, I'm liking it. I think we're gonna test out a few. We're gonna test out a few intros, but I'm liking that one. Another thing I'm liking is our presenting sponsor, Greta Bar YVR, a great spot for all games, home and away. We were there for the Canucks Army viewing party back on the 19th, but we're gonna be there for more throughout the season. So if you missed that first one, don't fret. You're not going to miss the other ones. I hope. I hope we see you there. Whether we're there or not, you should be, though. Greta is a great spot. Again, you got the games, you got the street food menu, you've got the weekly drink specials. Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Go play yourself some Guitar Hero, some air hockey. Take your pick. There's a lot of great games over at Greta. My name is Dave Grigelli. I am joined by Harman Dial once again, looking snazzy in a suit in the Honda Center press box. There's strobe lights going off his face right now as we speak. But Harman, thanks so much for taking the time today. Obviously, you're on the road, and you look. We got boots on the ground reporting here on Canucks Conversation.
100%, and I will say, like sometimes you go on road trips and it's let's say late November and you're in Edmonton, or it's Minnesota in December and you're freezing your butt off and you're like, boy, when it comes to potential NHL road trips you could be on, this kind of sucks. But then there are road trips like this one where in California, staying in Newport Beach, and then soon to be LA. I've been checking the weather back in Vancouver. Sounds like it was pouring and cold and gray. Meanwhile,
windy.
Here it's been
windy yesterday. Very windy yesterday.
It's been 22 degrees and sunny, and I've been out at the beach and shopping, and it's been pretty nice.
So, question for you: we don't go on the road much. When we go on the road, I love to send Jeff Patterson. I've said this before. I don't like traveling. I'm just not a big travel guy. I don't like planes. I don't like airports. I'm happy. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm not a big travel guy. But for you and Drance, how do you decide who gets the sunny road trips? Like, who's taking the Alberta road trip? How do you decide this?
So early on, it used to be like a draft where it's like, okay, you pick one road trip, I pick one road trip, and the condition on all of this though was that I almost always got Edmonton, like just as I'm the rookie, he's the vet. But now I think we sort of decided that he prefers doing more of the Eastern road trips, and I'll take more of the West, which I don't mind because it means a lot more California road trips, Vegas,
Nashville.
Nashville. I mean, again, certain spots like I haven't been to St. Louis yet, but if I imagine if I go to St. Louis, I'm not gonna love that. Or Minnesota can get really cold, but I'll take the West. I like the West. It's no time zone changes, easy travel, and yeah, the weather's usually really nice here.
Absolutely. Okay, news of the day, Harm. The Vancouver Canucks have recalled center Aatu Räty. We talked about this yesterday. You weren't here. I was with Patrick Johnson, but we talked about it yesterday. It really seemed like he was going to get it. I reported later in the afternoon that it was going to be him. I got confirmation after the show, of course. But Aatu Räty recalled by the Vancouver Canucks. Pius Suter going up to the top six to play with Elias Pettersson left a hole on that fourth line center spot, and that hole is going to be filled by Aatu Räty. We saw Rob the hockey guy all over Twitter. No offense to Rob, he was clamoring for Nils Amon, and basically, like, I responded to Rob's tweet. I just said, "What if Aatu Räty were younger, or excuse me, what if Aatu Räty were older, worse at face-offs, and had less upside?" And that's Nils Amon. So I'm happy that it's Aatu Räty getting the opportunity. I did start to wonder though, Harm. The thing that makes me curious is, okay, what about Jonathan Lecker-Mackey? He's off to a really hot start down in Abbotsford. He's a point-per-game player, 4 goals, 2 assists through 6 games, shooting a bajillion shots through 5 games or 6 games. And I started to wonder, like, should the Canucks call him up? Fired up a YouTube video. I made myself a little YouTube video on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Folks, go check it out. Links all over the place. But I wondered about that, Harm. And basically, the conclusion I came to is it's just like, if an opportunity arises, like there was an opportunity last week for Arshdeep Bains where he was playing top 6 minutes, if an opportunity like that comes, then I think it's Jonathan Lecker-Mackey that gets the opportunity. But with Joshua back, with Pius Suter playing in the top 6 on the wing, I don't think there's an opportunity right now for Jonathan Lecker-Mackey on this team.
Yeah, especially because it sounds like Dakota Joshua is going to return soon. I heard from Rick Tocchet today that a possibility to play on Thursday against the Kings, not guaranteed, but once he returns to the lineup, then it's another body among the forward and winger options that they have, and you're already looking at a situation where Nils Höglander's on the 4th line. like there's a lot of competition for these minutes on the wings, and I would be patient with Leer Mack. Let him build his confidence, and once there is that clear opportunity, then like you said, that's the type of spot where it might be worth a look. I will say, when Tocchet was discussing Aatu being recalled, he was talking about how he liked how Aatu got the opportunity the first 3 games early in the season because it gave him a taste of what the NHL is like, and then he could spend a chunk back in the AHL. And then now once he's recalled, Tocchet expects the game to feel slower for Aatu in the sense that he'll be able to adjust to the pace better. I wonder if that's an organizational philosophy that they have, whether they'll look to get Leer Mack a few games just for the sake of letting him get his feet wet, get that first look, and maybe that first opportunity that Leer Mack gets being called up isn't well, this is an extended runway and we expect you to stay with the NHL club for a long time, and maybe this is instead just a handful of games or less for you to get your feet wet. And that's an interesting sort of philosophy, because in my mind, I had initially been thinking, just let him cook in the AHL for as long as possible, let him build his confidence as much as he can, and then once you're going to call him up, have it be the type of opportunity where he can just stick, and it's like you're an NHL player now, similar to what Dallas sort of did with Logan Stankoven. But maybe the organization views it differently, and we'll see.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. I never really thought of that, but that's certainly something to watch. Like, that's something to watch because, like, they've done that before too. When Aatu is not the first, like we saw something similar with Baines, even like we've seen that before. So that's a really interesting thing to bring up, Harm. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right, let's go to Dave Hall, our prospect guru. Blackfish came out today, and the title, Harm, I know you read Blackfish just as much as I do. The title of Blackfish today, Dave, was Leer Mack and Aatu are feasting, Swedes are scoring in the SHL, and more. Lots of good stuff in today's Blackfish report. First of all, Dave, thanks so much for joining us. Give us 3 reasons why Jonathan Leer Mack is getting called up to the team.
We need shots in Vancouver. Sorry, Vancouver needs shots like instantly. So there's one. He's our top prospect, our Vancouver's top prospect. So it's time for him to get a look, and that's about it. I'm not in the camp of he should come up. So I don't have too many.
Fair. That's what we were. I'm not sure if you heard our conversation, but we were just discussing how it's like there's no real opportunity right now with Dakota Joshua coming back. But my take basically, Dave, is that if an opportunity arises, like there was one last week where Arshdeep Baines is getting top 6 minutes, like in my mind, that's the time when you can recall Jonathan Leer Mack. But really, he didn't go off until after that opportunity had gone. Timing is everything in the NHL. So Dave, just tell us about Jonathan Leer Mack's past week and really the start to his AHL season. We see the point totals. We see the bajillion shots on goal. Tell us about his season. Give us some context for what he's done so far in the AHL.
Well, context-wise, I mean, he made his debut on October 25th, and since then, he's now second in goals and third in points in the entire AHL. He's not only leading, but dominating in that span in shots. He has 34. I think the closest to him is 24 in that span. So he's come in guns a-blazing, just shooting at will. Whether that's a positive, like sometimes it's not always a positive, as you do wish that sometimes he'd wait a little bit longer for a little extra traffic to build up, but at the same rate, you love that he's shooting. That's exactly what we were hoping to see from him coming in, like just gaining that confidence, just getting acclimated to that speed and timing, and just feeling the confidence to take those shots. So it's been great. He finally got one, and it's hilarious. He takes all these half wall howitzers, doesn't score any of them, and then he scores his first by just standing in front of the net and getting an absolute tap in. So you love to see that. But since then, obviously the wheels came off, and he's just been shooting at will. And a lot of them credit to Aatu Räty as well. Like the 2 goals on Sunday, a lot of that has to do with Räty, his playmaking, and also a big nice physical check from him as well. So it's been good. At the same rate, he's also not dominating, which is why he's playing very well. Don't get me wrong, he's shooting a ton, but it's not like he's going out there and lighting everything up. He's got 4 goals, which is great. But there is still some, physical and just overall elements that you'd still like him to just kind of marinate. at the AHL level. So I personally don't know if it's time just yet. He's close, and 34 shots is nothing to scoff at. It's not like he's not playing amazing, but I just pump the brakes a little bit, in my opinion.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I was going to ask the next question, and I'm in the press box, and they're it's like testing out the arena music, so couldn't help but laugh there. With Leer Mack, how is he looking as a 5-on-5 play driver? We know the point totals are great, but as far as like actually dictating play and being an individual play creator, what are you seeing from that perspective?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm alluding to, like in the terms of like he still has some work to be done. I know he's a -5, and obviously right out the gate that looks terrible on the stat sheet. I do want to preface that it's been a pretty weak defensive effort by the entire team. The combination of Breezeball and Woo as a combo, I think they're -14 on the year. So it's been a tough go just as a team. So yes, he's -5, but he's also out there 20 minutes a night, so he's getting a lot of the brink of that negative side. But what I've liked is that he's not throwing hits and all that stuff, but he's getting into the corners. He's doing what he can to try at least go for those battles and come out with the puck. And when he does, he's had some nice looks. He set up Aatu Räty a few times now, where Räty just missed the one-timer for some good looks. There's still some elements, obviously. We'd love to see him get into the middle a little bit more. I know that's just not really part of his game. We saw quite a bit of it, slowly start creep into his game last year, but I think that's going to take time. But just overall, there's still some more that we'd like to see in the 5-on-5, and a lot of that comes down to his physical attributes. So far it's been okay. I'll leave it at that.
Aatu Räty recalled to the team, Dave. Your thoughts and just what you're expecting from him? Going to be skating on the fourth line, it looks like.
Yeah, it's tricky. I just tweeted this out where it's tricky. It's not something that Vancouver has had to really worry about in the past couple of years, but it's a fine line between letting them stew and develop at 22 minutes a night in Abbotsford, getting some points, and then calling them up to go on the fourth line and get 8 minutes, right? It's that fine line of trying to thread that development versus reward, because you want to instill a reward system within the system. You don't want them just to think that you're playing down and there's no actual end goal here. But it was time for him to come up. He's been dominant at the AHL level. He just stands out in a level that he didn't stand out last season for me. There were nights that he did stand out like this, but it was a little bit inconsistent. Whereas so far throughout this season, he's on the ice. You can tell that he's on the ice. You could just tell that he's a step above most of the players out there. So I've been super impressed. He's playing, I think it was around 22 minutes. He's playing top line, top power play. And when there's a penalty, he's the top guy out there taking faceoffs. I believe he's around the 60% percentage on the faceoff. So he's been dominant. If there was any player that deserves a look, it's definitely him. The only thing that I had issues with, and it was a bit of a selfish issue, is nothing actually against him. It's just those two, Leer Mack and Räty, have been heating up, and I would love to see them work on a line with Archdeep Baines to get his wheels going. So that's a selfish thing by my part, but yeah.
To your eye, where do you think Räty has improved the most? Because you mentioned him not standing out as much as a play driver in the AHL last year, but it wasn't just that he wasn't standing out as a play driver, but he played his best hockey on the wing. And I think heading into this season, we didn't really look at Räty as a center option. And so it's not just he's driving play, he's also doing it at center. It's a pretty significant leap. Why has he taken that leap? What parts of his game stand out as having taken a significant step forward?
Yeah, it's a great point. And look, I'll be the first to admit, I came on here many times last year and just said, look, let's cool our jets here. There's still some things that need to be cleaned up. You got to give him credit. He cleaned those up. The skating is the big thing. I know it's not elite, and at this point, it's probably never going to be. I think it just, he's just a little step behind, but at the same time, it's leaps and bounds about over what it was last year. I think that's a really big piece to his game that needed to kind of clean up just to be able to facilitate the play on both ends of the ice, be the first one back, be the first one in. And also just the work rate. The work rate was there last year, but it was just a consistency thing where, he'd show up really big for 2 games and then go kind of, motionless for 3, 4. But so far, so good just with the work rate. And yeah, the skating is the big thing.
Dave, final thing from me. It comes from the chat. It's from LC250 in the YouTube live chat, who asks, how does McWard and Woo look? You mentioned Woo and that pairing with Brisebois. Maybe you can expand on that a bit. But McWard as well. Those two players, McWard and Woo, are they an option to have a look at the NHL level on right D, where obviously the Canucks have had some issues so far this year?
Yeah, and I was a big proponent on them being getting a look last year. The issue with, I think, both of them, but especially McWard, I'll start with. I think the issue with McWard is he doesn't really stand out much in any particular fashion, which is a good thing. You know, he's just your solid, like I don't ever see him being, you know, that top four defenseman moving the puck, but he just gets things done. And at the AHL level, it works. He's got a good first pass. He's a good two-way defenseman, and he just doesn't, you know, he's good. He's just okay at pretty much everything. So it just works for him at the AHL level. And I think if you're looking for that kind of sturdy plug and play defenseman, I think McWard could be, you know, an option down the road. I really liked what I saw from Jet Woo last year. It's been a bit of a struggle and this year, and I think that has a lot to do with just, you know, the team is also just learning itself a lot. There's a lot of movement going on. It's also tough as well because in the AHL, obviously you're playing a lot of games. They're just coming off of 4 games in 6 nights. So they're playing a ton right now. And, you know, right now, like as you mentioned, that top line is getting exposed with Wim Brisebois rather. But, you know, there's been a lot of movement in the back end. So I think everyone's still just trying to figure each other out. But so McWard's just been, you know, as advertised, just a sturdy, steady two-way defenseman. It's been a little bit tough for Woo. We have seen him a little bit more engaged in the last couple games, which is nice. He's been throwing some big hits. But overall, I'd like to see a little more from Jet Woo for sure.
Last time you were on, you mentioned that Nikita Tolopilo was off to a really hot start. By the end of this season, would you be shocked if Tolopilo works his way into the conversation as potentially leapfrogging Artur Shilovs as the third string goaltender behind Demco and Lankinen?
It's $1 million question. And, you know, as soon as I, you know, pump his tires a bunch last week, he goes out and he goes in, lets 4 goals on 11 shots, gets pulled. Patera ended up getting back-to-back starts this week. So now we haven't seen Tolopilo basically since I was on last. And so it's been a whirlwind. And Patera, who was on the exact opposite spectrum, he was terrible in his first game, decent in his second. But since I was on here, he then went 2 goals in 10 periods of hockey. Of course, he ended up having that incredible breakdown in the last 10 minutes of the San Diego game on Sunday. But so it's been a polar opposite. And the only reason why I bring that up is because at this point, you know, Tolopilo is my guy. I love his game. He's so composed. He's comfortable back there. It's just, you know, at this point, it's just the consistency thing. It's hard to really give a direct answer to that because we just need to see it on a more consistent basis. So I think he definitely has warranted a look. He's been strong. He's composed back there. He definitely doesn't get fazed by much. So I do like his game. Obviously, I do believe that Sea-Lodge, you know, there should be kind of a back and forth. I'd love him to get some games in Abbotsford, and whether that means Patera goes up or Tolopilo. So long-winded answer. Maybe, yeah, maybe it's time to get. I would like to at least see him get a look, but we'll see. The jury's still out in the goaltending. It's a complete. It's all over the place.
Dave, great stuff as always. Thanks so much for joining us. People can read Blackfish weekly on Canucks Army every.
Yeah, have a good trip, Harm. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dave. There he is, Dave Hall, Canucks Army's prospect guru. All right, let's actually, Harm. You probably saw this. The Vancouver Whitecaps. Did you see? They're moving on in. I wasn't able to see. Game 3. They had a huge win over LAFC 2024 MLS Cup playoffs. They play on Friday now for Game 3 of the best 3 series. We're rooting for the Whitecaps big time on this show. Go to whitecaps.ca. Do it. Big fan of the Vancouver Whitecaps here.
Saw a lot of my friends posting on their Instagram story at being at one of the recent games. So that was pretty cool.
That one, the one I'm talking about, that was a big deal. That was a big deal. That was a big deal.
A lot of posts, like a lot more than usual.
Yeah. Do you know who Zlatan Ibrahimovic is?
I do, yeah.
Does he still play for LA? Anybody know, Jacob?
No, he is. First off, he played for the other LA team. He played for LA Galaxy, and he left like 5 years ago. He was there for like a season and a half.
I was gonna
And then
say
he went back
to
to
like
Europe.
45 or something.
Yeah,
now.
he's retired now, but he came to North America. He played, then he went back to Europe again because they realized, oh, he's 40 but still good. And then he's been retired for a few years.
That's like saying, does Dustin Brown still play for the LA Kings?
Big fans of the Vancouver Whitecaps on this show. Don't know many other MLS teams, but we know the Vancouver Whitecaps. Shout out Vanni Sartini. That's my guy now. That's my guy. Yeah, people in the chat are like, oh my goodness, that was 5 years ago. All right, moving right past that. Harman, you're in Anaheim right now, so what are you seeing? Let's start with Derek Forbort, okay? Because yesterday at practice, Forbort leaves. You saw it. What happened?
Yeah, so it was a pretty innocuous looking sequence where they were just sort of doing rush drills. It wasn't really a lot of contact or physicality, but he sort of seemed to get caught up with one of the forwards, and it wasn't even like an awkward collision or him falling over, but whatever it was in the corner, he was immediately in some discomfort and in some pain. He immediately went to the bench, was really favoring one of his legs, and immediately left the ice. Wasn't on the ice for morning skate today. Rick Tocchet said today that he's going to be evaluated soon, but doesn't look great as far as Forbort. And let's remember, this is a guy that has had durability concerns in the past and is up there in age, plus his foot speed already isn't the best, so it's a bit of a concerning situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like it's going to be Vincent Desharnais and Eric Brandstrom tonight on the third pair together.
I'll also say this. I don't even know if Forbort was going to slot into lineup anyway, because Brandstrom and Desharnais were a pair at practice anyway. It was Juleson and Forbort who were together, and Juleson is going to be the scratch, so we assume that was the fourth D pair.
Yeah, I saw that actually in your tweet that you mentioned that. Yesterday's practice, you had that. So speaking of Juleson, he was the one taking shots, you said, on Thatcher Demco. So Thatcher Demco, no, I'm not going to make a joke about not facing NHL shooters yet. Noah Juleson was shooting on Thatcher Demco. And you also said you saw the Sedins out there, Jason Krog as well. Thatcher Demco facing live shots. Now, I know I'm asking a lot, but like, did you see him popping into the RVH? Because to me, like I've talked about this for a while, that's the big step that we need to see from Demco is can he do that movement that really, like that was the movement that caused the injury. Has he been able to pop into the post? Like, have you seen it?
I haven't seen any sharp RVH movements. It was more like at least from what I saw, because I sort of came into it in the middle of it after media availabilities. It was more like one of the Sedins or Juleson would sort of come down in sort of like a breakaway, kind of like at 60-70% type pace, and they take shots from close distance. It wasn't like a lot of like explosive post to post movement. I will say that the last time I saw Demco live in a setting like that was training camp, and I will say it does look like he's made at least a significant amount of progress as far as how comfortable he looks facing those shots. Because I remember in Penticton watching him in that type of environment, Drancer9, we noticed that he looked uncomfortable with one of his legs, just like the way that he was getting up after shots, the way that he was like shaking his leg out. He looks a lot more comfortable now. I'd say he's moving somewhere around, like if I had to put an estimate, around 70% pace. I mean, it doesn't matter. He was getting beat a lot. So it's one of those things where he is starting to ramp up. He's looking a lot more comfortable. Now I'm just curious to see, will he practice tomorrow with the team in LA? I'm not certain, but it's something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on.
Okay, Kevin Lankinen starts tonight for the Canucks against the Ducks. Anything else that you had? Like we already kind of talked about Pius Suter. We kind of previewed the Ducks game yesterday. We'll be back tomorrow to break it all down. But anything you wanted to say about the Ducks game tonight? The Wagon Ducks?
I was just going to say, as far as Räty getting called up, one of the reasons that I think he's gotten this look ahead of Oman is this idea of identity, right? Oftentimes it's not just can you play NHL games and not hurt us. It's like, what's your role? What do you actually bring to the table? With Oman, that's been the challenge, right? Is he's not good enough on faceoffs to be like this defensive specialist. He's also not physical enough to provide like an energy, provide energy and physicality as a sort of crash and bang fourth liner. Whereas with Aatu, what Tocchet said is they see the potential for him to have a distinct identity because of not only the faceoffs, but Tocchet mentioned he's noticed how hard Aatu is on pucks and that he can be nasty to play against at times. And he says that if Aatu can maintain that edge and physicality and being hard to play against, especially because he is a bit of a bigger body, and he continues excelling on draws, well, all of a sudden you've got a clear identity as bottom six center, something that distinguishes you from other potential depth options. And so I think that's going to be interesting to track for Aatu is that identity. I think that's what Tocchet and the coaching staff is looking for as far as whether or not he can actually hold down this fourth line center role consistently and earn a longer leash.
Really, like, can he be better than Nils Åman? I think the team thinks he can be. Now he's got to go do it, and he's got to be that option that they're going to be looking at. And it's not going to be a conversation of, oh, well, they need Nils Åman back. That's what I think Aatu Räty needs to do for himself, is really, just like you said, carve out that identity that Nils Åman struggled, let's be honest, to carve out for himself at the NHL level.
It is also going to be a big look because if Joshua returns on Thursday against LA, if that happens, then could Suter end up, I mean, it depends on, like, if Suter has another great night in the top six, he's going to stay there. But if he, let's say, doesn't mesh, doesn't have an electric night playing on the Pettersson line, then could Suter end up back on the fourth line, and Joshua is moving up into a top six role to play with Pettersson. Now, maybe they won't do that because they want to slowly ramp Joshua back up. But the point is, with Joshua coming back soon, like Aatu, like he's gonna want to have a strong performance against Anaheim because somebody is gonna have to come out for Joshua soon.
Sprong, probably just gonna be Sprong, but Sprong's been good since he came back. He's been good. Like, he's been good. Sprong's been good. I hope it's not Sprong. Not what I'm trying to say. I just think, like, that's probably the easy answer. But let's hope Aatu Räty makes it so that he's not the easy answer when it comes to who's coming out of the lineup. Okay, good stuff, Harm. Anything else on Ducks that you wanted to get to?
Not really.
It's all good.
Disappointed. I've been like, when are they going to improve? Right? Like, man, they have these, like, they have this talented, forward group. And this is where a lot of rebuilding teams get stuck, right? Is you have a lot of blue chip prospects and young players that look exciting on paper, right? Where it's like Leo Carlson and Mason McTavish and Troy Terry, Trevor Zegras, Cutter Gauthier, but it takes time for those guys to, like, really break out. And yeah, I mean, it's been disappointing. Like, I thought by now that, I mean, not that they'd be playoff competitive or anything like that, but if you asked me 2 years ago, are the Ducks at least going to be a team that isn't in contention for a bottom five spot in the NHL standings? I would have said yeah, and yet it's been this, like, really slow burn for them where they're still not a very good team.
Do you think it's a little crazy that Radko Gudas is the captain of this team and that Cam Fowler isn't?
No, because Gudas was really, really good for them last year. It was actually shocking where if you looked at some of the numbers, Gudas was around break even at 5-on-5. And I don't know if you remember how bad the Ducks were last year, especially defensively, but it was like when Radko Gudas is on the ice, the Ducks are actually a competent hockey team. When he's off the ice, they're awful. And Cam Fowler, he is just not a top pair caliber defenseman anymore. He's really been struggling. And I think it's also a reflection of, we saw the reports earlier in the season that sounds like the player and team sort of agree that given how many blue line prospects they have coming that are pushing for bigger roles, that Fowler's not going to be long for Anaheim. So why not name a captain who was more instrumental for their success last year, who has this, like, physical edge that they desperately need and is a respected veteran.
Identity. Give them an identity. All right, Harm. Good stuff. Let's get to anyone else, which is proudly presented by, and you can't enjoy this because you're down under, or down in the States, I should say. Anyone else, presented by White Spot. At White Spot, they're all about enjoying great, comforting food and spending quality time with loved ones. With a new comfort menu, White Spot is focusing on cozy, satisfying flavors that are perfect to enjoy with family. Available now and developed by the White Spot culinary team, the comfort menu is filled with warm, indulgent dishes designed to make you feel right at home. The new menu features mouthwatering new additions like mini Yorkies, the braised beef burger, the homestyle pot roast, and backed by popular demand, the iconic chicken pot pie. Bring your family to White Spot for a delicious meal perfect for the season. Visit your local White Spot today.
Yeah, the Australia Ducks.
Yeah, as soon as I said down, I'm like, oh wait, that's used to describe Australia. You're down south. You're below the border. You're below the border. Big news tonight. Below the border. Stay safe out there, Harm. But let's get to anyone else. There were some good ones in the chat. This one from Matt Folger about my earlier comment about Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He said, "Does Luke Robitaille still play for LAFC?" I forgot there was 2 LA teams, and I knew that. Like I knew that LA Galaxy and LAFC are 2 different teams. Jacob, aren't LAFC a newer team though? Like, aren't they like expansion?
Yeah, they came around in like the mid 2010s.
So the
maybe
last
late
time I have
2010s.
memories about soccer.
Yeah, they were
apparently.
founded in 2014. I think their first season was the 2015 season.
Wow, I
And
thought it was
Quad-
way more recent than that.
Next show, Quad's is gonna be like, yeah, David Beckham's still in the MLS, right?
I mean,
He
technically
was
he
there
is
not
as
that
an
long
owner.
ago.
Well,
He
I
just-
mean,
He owns
When-
a team in the MLS.
When did he play? When did he last play? It wasn't that long ago, was it?
Oh, over 10 years
it's
ago.
been a while, man. It's been longer than you probably think.
It is. I just googled it. It's way long. I thought he was like, okay. Anyways, no more soccer talk. Let's talk hockey. Let's talk hockey. That's what we're here to do. Shout out to the Vancouver Whitecaps. Okay, let's see here. What do we have? Yeah, this is the same thing. Benjamin Andrews, and I think we've talked about this a few times. And realistically, we broke it down yesterday. Harm, the Canucks have, or they will accrue about $6 million in cap space by the trade deadline. Right? That's going to be great for them that they're going to have that. You get rid of Vincent Desharnais, all of a sudden you've got $8 million at the trade deadline. You also get $2 million for next year. This question from Benjamin Andrews: does Desharnais get flipped at the trade deadline if he can't adjust to Tocchet's systems? I'll tell you the simple answer is yes. Like, I think yes, and I think you talked about it on Friday's show that you would be able to sell a team on Vincent Desharnais. It wouldn't be okay, take a 3rd round pick to take Vinny off our hands or anything like that.
Yeah, probably. I mean, just because teams love their 6'6", 6'7" defensemen, and
Canucks included.
Last year he was perfectly serviceable in a 3rd pair role. Now, for that to happen, the Canucks would need to bring in another depth RD beyond just finding another top 4 defenseman, because Noah Juleson hasn't been, I think, as effective as he was last season. So you'd have to sort of compensate for that as well. But yeah, I mean, if Desharnais continues to play like this, it's he should be somebody that they look at as far as clearing salary, because it's not just this season, right? It's also next year where he's going to be on the books. Tyler Myers is still going to be on the books. Philip Hronik is going to be on the books on that right side. And by next season, could Tom Willander be ready to contend for an NHL spot? I think it's more likely than not that he'll need a year in the AHL, but who knows? If he's ahead of schedule, you don't want the pathway to be blocked by 3 defensemen that all make well above a league minimum on the right side. So yeah, we'll see with Desharnais. Again, it's only been 10 games, so who knows? Maybe he'll start to figure things out with Markstrom and settle in. There is a lot to adjust to, but yeah, I mean, if he continues to look like this, absolutely, you look to move that contract out.
Paul Papadoulis in the chat: what are the odds Shelovs gets any games until Demco is back? I said it already, and I'll say it again: low. I don't think you start Artur Shelovs, especially if Demco's 2-3 weeks away. You got no back-to-backs in the month of November. I don't think Artur Shelovs gets another start, honestly. And I'm not saying that because, you got to bring up Yuri Patera or you have to bring up Nikita Tolopilo. Shelovs just hasn't been good enough. I think he needs to rebuild his confidence, and I think he needs to do that in the AHL. If you have Demco coming back, you're thankful that Kevin Lankinen is playing the way he is. I don't think there's much that Kevin Lankinen could do to make me say, yeah, you got to turn back to Artur Shelovs. I think the schedule allows the Canucks to really just ride Kevin Lankinen here and wait for Thatcher Demko to come back. Again, he's supposed to be 2-3 weeks away. If he's back by the end of November, I don't think Artur Shelovs gets another start. I'm not even saying like, you got to keep him to 1 or 2. I don't think he starts again.
workload wise, would you, because the timeline for that back-to-back to come up, I think it's about, it would, Lankinen would need to play 10 or 11 games in a row for us to sort of get to that point where it's like, okay, Demco might be back by then. And of course, with the back-to-back, your hand is going to be forced as far as using a second goaltender. But would 10 or 11 games in a row for Lankinen potentially be too many, considering that he's never played more than 40 games in a season? And I think it was JPAT that brought up that during his last 2 seasons in Nashville, he hadn't even played back-to-back starts, period.
Well, if he keeps playing like this, I think it's fine, right? Like, I think it's fine to keep playing him. And I misspoke. There is a back-to-back in the Canucks schedule in November, 26th and 27th against Boston and Pittsburgh. So that'd be my answer, I guess, is if Demko's not back by then, Sheloves gets one of those starts. Sure, you're not starting Lankinen on back-to-back nights. That's dramatic. But again, most of this month is at home. I would start Lankinen for all of those games. I think that's important context too, Harm, because playing 10 games in a row with travel is a little bit different than playing 10 games in a row, 6 of which are at home. Because again, you have Anaheim, LA, then you've got Edmonton, Calgary, New York, Chicago, Nashville, New York, and then you're back out on the road on the 23rd against the Senators. Like, I don't think that's too much to ask for Kevin Lankinen, especially, and again, context, if he's playing like this, and he's not showing any signs of slowing down or breaking down for that matter, I would start Kevin Lankinen a ton. That's what I would do. Jeff Patterson, watching on X here, says, there's a back-to-back at the end of next week at home for Chicago. Wait, what? No. Oh, there is. Yeah, there's another one. I missed one as well. Even Jeff pointed it out. That's good that Jeff pointed it out. Okay, so there's 2 back-to-backs.
Oh, yeah, I missed that too. That's great. Okay, well, Sheloves gets one of those. Sheloves only gets back-to-back games. That's what I'll say. Because if Demko's not back, Sheloves gets back-to-back games. Thanks to Jeff for the save there. Saving us.
Jeff will be back. Jeff will be on the show tomorrow, but somehow he's on the show today. Anyways, Jeff will join us.
I'm pretty sure we
tomorrow.
referenced only one back-to-back, like in a previous show too.
Yeah. I just referenced no back-to-backs. So anyways, Jeff Patterson contributing to the show. Even when he's not on the show, he still contributes to the show. So yeah, like Harm, to answer the question, yes, it would just be back-to-backs in my mind. You give Sheloves those, and that's it. Yeah. In my mind. Okay, anyone else? This was mine. I had this I wanted to bring up. Bowen Byrum. Okay, Darren Dreger brought it up on Sakaris and Price yesterday, and then Rick Dhaliwal added some context today. Dhaliwal sharing that the Canucks asked for Bowen Byrum from the Avalanche during JT Miller trade negotiations. The Avs wanted Miller, and the Canucks asked for a package, this is according to Dhaliwal, centered around Bowen Byrum and, at the time, Alex Newhook. Now, this is interesting, obviously, because Bowen Byrum, not on the market with the Sabres right now by any means, but he has been brought up a few times now, and it's clear that this is a player the Canucks are interested in, and why wouldn't they be? He's off to a really good start this year as well. This is a guy that played in their own backyard, and I think the context here is that this current management regime was interested in Bowen Byrum in the past.
Well, you asked in the past, what's the next Phil Peronic opportunity where a team might have to move on from a defenseman because they see an RFA in line for a significant payday? Well, Byrum's that type of possibility where he's going to be an RFA, I believe, at the end of this season. And more importantly, the Sabres already have a lot of money committed to the back end. They're paying Dahlin $11 million. They're paying Power $8.35. Matthias Samuelsson is north of $4 million. Connor Clifton is at $3.3 million. So they've got quite a bit of money already committed on the blue line. Plus, it's not just that Byrum's an RFA; he also has arbitration rights. So if he has a good season, puts up decent point totals, they're going to have to make a tough decision as far as, are they going to be willing to pay big money on an extension for another defenseman? So that's the sort of context. And Byrum's an interesting player because I remember watching him during the Avs 2022 Stanley Cup victory, and he was electric. He looked like a top pair caliber stud. I know he wasn't technically on the top pair because Taves and McCarr were on that first pair, but he, I believe, led all Avs skaters for 5-on-5 ice time in the Stanley Cup final. Was all over the ice, not just breaking pucks out, but also defensively. Since then, it's been a little bit up and down for him as far as his actual development. I think defensively, he's shown holes at times. Even coming over to Buffalo, yeah, you mentioned his start. The point totals are there, but the underlying numbers since he's gone to the Sabres haven't been the best. Now, again, context matters. When you go to a team that doesn't play very well, sometimes the environment just drags a defenseman's numbers down, and it may not even be Byrum's fault necessarily. But the point I'm trying to make is he's not this surefire, like high-end top four defenseman. Like, this is a sort of a player that you'd have to do a real deep dive on and look at and say, well, is he going to be as valuable as his next contract is going to dictate based off his like point totals and ice time, and where is he at? Because the last couple of years he has been a little bit inconsistent, but there's no doubt that he's got elite skating ability, that he is a really, really high-end puck mover. It's just, is his all-around game ever going to get back to the type of level that we saw during that Stanley Cup winning year with the Avs?
I think that's one that you look at and say there's enough raw tools there that the Canucks coaching staff must be able to figure something out with him. That's the way I look at it, at least. So we'll see. Keep an eye on it. It was thrown out today. Jacob had something for us to close out anyone else as well. The NHL 25 player or coach models came out yesterday, was it, Jacob?
Yes, it was yesterday, and they did Rick Tocchet. They did him dirty, as you can see.
Oh,
what's with the Bozo the Clown haircut? Like, that's just, he doesn't have hair. Like, and he uses the Bic razors. I remember him telling us about this. That's what he cut his head one day because he bought Bic, or he bought gas station razors or something, and accidentally cut his head because he shaves his head himself. And it's just, it's just wrong.
See,
and I saw people pointing out, like, Martin St. Louis, his NHL 09 player model, and Rod Brindamore's NHL 09 player model. I don't know if you saw this, Jacob. Their player models compared to what they look like in NHL 25 as coaches, and they looked better in NHL 09 than they did 25.
Yeah, EA is catching some flack here. They finally got, first off, it took them until NHL 25 to actually put real coaches in the game. Like, the other games have had this for 20 years, but like the fact that they did it and they used, like, the fans behind him look more like real human beings than he does, which is kind of telling, considering, again, that, you know, for someone like Brindamore or Martin St. Louis, who were in the game as players recently, and actually I think some of those, there was one or two coaches who were actually in the games as like a legend player, and then they already have a proper face scan of them as a player in the game, and then they still have this weird PS2 looking graphic for their.
It's so their weird.
Coach. It's so weird. Pretty bad.
NHL 25 is the most half-assed game I've ever played.
I also remember, I think it may have been NHL 08. I can't remember the exact title, but around then on PlayStation 3, they did actually have coach models at the time. And I remember thinking, oh, for 2008, like, this is pretty good. Like, I remember playing with the Canucks and Alain Vigneault. It wasn't amazing, but it looked like Alain Vigneault. Like, you could clearly sort of tell. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that I think the face models for the coaches back then on PlayStation 3 for the one or two video games where EA actually put the work in, I think they were better then than they are now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And also, I don't know if you caught this. They announced that for the first time in franchise history, we have coaches, and then people sent them screenshots of like NHL 08, and it's like, no, you've had coaches in the games before. Anyways, it's just I don't even want to talk about it. I don't even want to talk about it. It's such a bad game. It's so disappointing. Save your money, folks. It's the most disappointing game I've played in some time. But anyways,
I don't think EA is going to be sponsoring this show anytime soon.
It's okay. It's all good. I can live with that.
No, I know. I was just
we'll get to our Bet365 bet of the day. Harm, I'm touching the Calgary Flames game, where the Flames are favorites against Jacob's Montreal Canadiens, but I'm taking those Montreal Canadiens, the underdog Montreal Canadiens, to beat my Wagon Flames. Ooh, wow. Pains me to say it, but I'm taking it. Plus 125, you can get the Habs to beat the Flames. You can get that over at Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. We'll see. No, oh, okay. I saw someone in the chat. Web.3 say quads def trash at NHL 25. I think both of you can attest to how good I am at NHL, but Ishel, like I'm still Div 1 Ishel there, Web.3, and I play with Faber a lot. We will still dust you. Like you'll still lose to us. We're still better than everybody, but I'm not enjoying the game nearly as much as I enjoyed NHL 24. I'm good at it. It's definitely not a skill issue. I'm good at NHL 25. It sucks. It's a bad game. But anyways, final thoughts, Harm?
No, I'll vouch for your NHL skills. You're pretty good.
Thank you. All right, we'll close it out there. For my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Jacob Lazar, my name is Dave Vergelli. Thank you so much for this episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.